Hey friends, I don't know if you guys are seeing me. I am doing a live stream right now. I'm just gonna see if it's up on my channels. Yep, okay, there I am. Uh, I hope that people will tune in. I'm gonna give that a few moments to happen. Mainly, I want to do this live stream because I was just signed up to give testimony in Washington State on Washington State Bill HB 1956, which was an information act regarding women's prisons and women incarcerated in prisons. I waited for over 2.5 hours to give testimony, and then they cut off testimony after maybe less than a dozen people testified. So, first of all, I'm very frustrated. That was very, very obnoxious and annoying for them to cut it off like that. And second of all, I really wanted to give my testimony. So this is, something that I think is really urgent. Right now, women in Washington state prisons and also California state prisons are being incarcerated with men, and this is absolutely sickening. The bill HB 1956 is created to suppress information. So it is suppressing public access to information about men, about who is a man, and about whether or not men are being housed in women's prisons, and if women's prisoners, women incarcerated women are being raped, who are they being raped by? So PREA laws say that we, the public, can have access to that information, and this bill would suppress access to that information in the name of privacy. Hey, Dawn, thank you for being here. I appreciate you so much. So I am incredibly frustrated. Um, it's just galling, because the public should have the ability to comment on these things. This is why I signed up specifically to comment. I waited for hours and hours to be able to comment. They took comments. There were 3 bills on the docket today, and they took comments for all of those bills. They took everyone's comments for those bills. So I find it very suspect and very sinister that they chose not to take comments for this bill. It's just, it's, those who are following me, you can begin to see the strategies and the tactics that are being used. And as you see them adding up and compiling, you see that this is a concerted effort. There is a concerted effort to silence women who want to speak up about these issues. And it's very, very sickening and very concerning. So I'm going to give my testimony now. I want to say the testimony that I prepared. I was able to submit it as written testimony, but of course, written testimony is much less impactful. And, the public deserves to be able to give their live testimony around these things. And I think it's just really cowardly for the state representatives to refuse to hear in-person testimony about this, because that in-person testimony is really impactful. Yeah, that's democracy. Exactly. So when they refuse to hear us, they are, just taking away our right for democratic participation. So yeah. So, so my testimony. So I wanted to say, yay, thank you, Deprogrammer, for being here. Yeah, the silencing and the censoring are outrageous. So here's my testimony. I'll probably edit this beginning part down because I did want to just vent first. But my testimony is this. So I say, my name is Amy Souza, and I urge you to vote no on HB 1956. Safeguarding women requires fair reporting and public access to information. Our foremothers fought for women's single sex prisons to protect women's bodies. American suffragette leaders, after visiting Sing Sing prison in 1844 and seeing the conditions of the women there, began the campaign for sex segregated prisons. In this effort, they kept diaries to record instances of sexual assault and rape for public record. Now, the notion of inclusivity is being used by those promoting the doctrine of gender identities, but this inclusion comes at the direct expense of women's boundaries around our bodies. Many men are vulnerable in male prisons: gay men, pretty men, young men, and yes, men who claim special identities. But if some men are unsafe in men's prisons, this is an issue to be taken up with men's prisons. Incarcerated women must not be used as human shields for vulnerable men. To use them as such is cruel and unusual punishment. All men are equally physically men, regardless of their identity claims. Minimizing and erasing sex in the favor of identity is an act of abusive sexism. Sex matters, bodies matter. Multiple female prisons in the Gig Harbor Correction Center for Women filed complaints with prison staff about sexual assault by male prisoners. In the name of women's continued sex-based rights, women have the right to accurately name the sex of the men who assault them, and for this to be on public record and freely accessible. In the name of women's bodily integrity and fair reporting, I urge you to oppose HB 1956. That's my testimony that I did not get to give, but that I very much wanted to give. I noted that they let a lot of the gender identitarians give their testimony. Uh, those people were allowed to speak. Those people were given a platform. They were allowed to talk. They went on and on about how, giving the public access to these records was an invasion of privacy. So now we are worried that serial rapists will have their privacy invaded. Why are we protecting the identities of serial rapists? The public deserves to know that. It's just absolutely insane and galling that we would go around and protect these men's identities. Incarcerated women are being raped currently. They are at risk. They are being assaulted by the male prisoners who are housed with them, the men that are housed with them. They're not being allowed to talk about it. This information is being suppressed. And this is a bill in the guise of the dogma that's being used, wrapped in words that are saturated with propaganda. They're saturated with things like inclusivity. That is the sugarcoating on like basically like a what do you call it? Like a razor blade cake that is harming women and girls. And I'm laughing because it's ridiculous, and it's galling, and I'm very upset. Yeah, and as the deprogrammer says, erasing the sex of violent male prisoners who claim to be women is a form of his. I'm going to just put it up. Erasing the sex of violent male predators who claim to be women is a form of historical revisionism, a tactic of fascist regimes. Absolutely. Also, anyone not already following the deprogrammer who happens to be here should absolutely follow her channel. I brought up one of the things that I brought up in my testimony was the American suffragettes and their tactics. They had a very specific tactic when they were trying to create sex segregated prisons in the first place. And that tactic had to do with recording. They kept extensive journals and diaries recording the amount of sexual assaults and rapes that were happening to the female prisoners. So this this tactic is still useful. The public still needs access to these records. So what is happening to incarcerated women now, in order to protect them, in order to safeguard them and their rights and their boundaries, we still need public access to, if they are being raped, who is raping them, what is happening to them. So to act like it's somehow in violation of men's identities to record this information is just absolutely sinister. This is sexism in action. Heather, so okay, a couple of women got to give testimony. There was a representative from Wolf who got to speak. What her name was? Sorry, I'm gonna look it up right now. Um, Amanda Hodeschel was able to give testimony. Elizabeth Hummel gave testimony. God, I'm trying to remember who all actually gave their testimony. The testimony will be up. I believe that it was live streamed on YouTube. Let me put the Washington State Correctional link in, because I think there is a link to. Let me see that. Just bear with me. I'm getting to it. There should be. There is a link to the testimony, I believe. It was live streamed, but oh, here we go. It was okay. I'm going to put this up in the StreamYard. It was live streamed. Okay, I put that up there. So you can follow that path. It was live streamed, but I don't know if they are saving it or putting it up there. They have a YouTube page, so I think it is on their YouTube. Washington State has a YouTube. Oh, yay, thanks, Dawn. And Dawn is giving us a 5-minute video about the suffragettes, which is always good to see. Well, I'm not gonna let this video run on for very long, but I just wanted to come on and, like, I've been sitting here prepared. I dressed up in my suffragette whites, and I wore my adult human female pin, all in the hopes that I would get to give my testimony, and I waited for hours to give it, and it was really frustrating not to give it, which is why I wanted to come here. I think there were only, I think they only allowed 4. There was only 4 women that I can think of who testified against the bill. Everyone else that testified was in favor of the bill. So so Barbara, this was for Washington State Bill HB 1956, which is an information act regarding women's prisons. Well, it's regarding all incarcerated prisoners. So it's an information act that would suppress the identity of prisoners. So with the if this bill passes, it means that the public will no longer have access to basically who is doing the raping in the prisons and who is being raped. So women, you won't be able to, PREA laws will basically be nullified. So PREA laws are set in place so the public can gain access to this information. So you can track, like, basically how many men are incarcerated with women, if the men who are incarcerated with women are raping women, who is the one who did the raping, like the exact person, and who is the victim in the circumstance. So this bill will suppress all of that in the name of privacy. So it's a privacy bill to protect the privacy of so-called transgender inmates. They also, weirdly, this was kind of weird, were saying that this was also for the privacy of disabled inmates. And they did have a person with developmental disabilities testifying in the pro. And this guy basically spoke about how, disabled people are really at risk of their identities being known. So it was a very bizarre forced teaming, I thought. And of course they would use this forced teaming tactic. I don't know, I guess, how many disabled people are at risk because of their prison records are available. But frankly, there's a reason that the public does have access to prison records. People who are felons, people who commit multiple rapes or serial rapists or serial murderers. There's a reason why the public has a right to know who those people are. So this is really puts the public at risk. I think it puts all of the public at risk, but it also specifically puts incarcerated women at risk because organizations like Wolf are tracking this and using public records to be able to track how many men are housed with women. Yeah, and the deprogrammer says, I also see propaganda about the bill online claiming that this is about privacy regarding religious affiliation. Yeah, yeah, they are. They are always hiding the attacks of women under something else. So they're using a lot of multiple tactics to kind of smooth this over and make it be about, protecting people. There were a number of trans rights activists who, of course, were allowed to give their testimony. I noticed they didn't really get cut off either. Everyone was told that they would have 1 minute, and I was timing it. And, a lot of people got over a minute. They got, a minute 30 and were allowed to speak over. In other states that I've testified, like when I testified in Texas, they allowed everyone to testify, and it meant that the hearing did go on for a number of hours. It went on for, well, that the particular one that I went to was like, I don't know, 20 hours. But it's just like after 2 hours to cut it off, and there were only 3 bills on the docket. Of course, this bill, HB 1956, was the last one on the docket, and it was the only one in which those signed up to testify were cut off. Yeah. Thanks, Heather. Yeah, absolutely. It's just unacceptable. What's happening to all women is unacceptable, and specifically, what is happening to incarcerated women is absolutely unacceptable. And I'm glad that they at least took written testimony, but it's different. Live testimony is really impactful. And I do think there's a reason why they suppressed our live testimony. And it's really a shame because I know there was just a number of women waiting to give testimony. There were a number of women on a chat together waiting to give testimony. And we were told at the beginning that there were over 120 of us waiting to testify. So it's pretty disappointing, and at a minute each, that would have been a couple of hours, but I think very well worth it. And, we have a right to have our public dissent on record. So it's just galling when they take that away. A lot of people took time off of work or time out of their day to sit there for 2 hours and wait for the opportunity. So yeah, to have that opportunity taken away was really galling. So I'm gonna after I get off this live stream, I'll edit the testimony. I'll edit this live video so that you can just see the testimony part. And I'll also be alongside this video on Facebook and on my Twitter and on my YouTube. I'll publish the testimony that I gave. I did think it was really important to ground my testimony in our foremothers, in the work of the suffragettes. I thought that would be a really good tactic because I felt like that's probably not something that everyone else was going to speak about, and I felt like it might have an emotional impact to those who are currently the Congress members and the senators who are listening to this. I thought that might be something that would impact them, but I don't know. And it's hard to say because it's like it's very frustrating because if they had been watching my testimony, I would have seen them watching it. And it's just hard to say if they're actually going to take the time to read all of the written testimony. Thank you, deprogrammer. Yeah. And it's true. The women who are incarcerated don't have a voice. Um, and there's I just want to say, I want to give a shout out to Amy Ichikawa. I believe she was also one of the women who were signed up to give testimony, and that would have been really invaluable because of the work she does to keep women's prisons single sex, and also because of her experience as a formerly incarcerated woman herself. It's really a shame that she wasn't allowed to speak. Um, and yeah, and I know that in Canada, I want to shout out Heather Mason, who also is a formerly incarcerated woman who now is a political activist for women's prisons and keeping women's prison single sex. I want to give a shout out to the organization Keep Women's Prisons Single Sex. I know the UK has been doing a lot around that. They just had protests recently. It's been all over Twitter. Um, yeah, that's so true. Yeah, they they should be. It's really yeah, it's really. Oh, women to women. Thanks, Kat. So Amy Ichikawa is women to women. Thank you. I didn't accurately remember the name of the organization she was working for. Um, I don't know. I think that my guess is that it was political, and they didn't. I don't think they wanted it literally on. This was live streaming on the Washington State Senate YouTube page, so I think they just didn't want it on their page. I think they didn't want it on public record visibly. That's my guess. So I think it was absolutely, political. Just a friggin' bummer. Like, makes me so mad. Uh, um, Yay. Well, thank you, friends. Those of you who showed up to, yeah, watch this little rant. Thanks for watching me give my testimony. Um, we're all of us are in this together. The few of us who are here on this live stream, we're in it together, and we have much larger networks too who are in it together. And here's the thing, like, if we keep being loud about this, if we model that for others, that's really my aim, is to model this for other women who still feel frightened about speaking out. If we model this for others, it's a great encouragement. That phrase, courage calls to courage, is really true. That's what happened for me. I saw women being courageous, and then I started being courageous myself. And I just do want to say that courage is a practice. It's something that you can practice like any other practice. It's like, I don't know, it's like working out or doing yoga or learning to sing or play the guitar. Like, courage can absolutely be practiced. And if you do it just like a little bit every day and stretch yourself just a little bit every day, you can absolutely get better and better and better at it. Also, thank you, Rose. I really just do activism for the compliments on my clothing. Anyway, thank you all. I really appreciate you all. Yeah, and as Ali said, it's for the young girls. It's for all women. And okay, I just want to make one more observation as well. Um, I've been speaking to Deprogrammer a lot about this. And yeah, it is an all hands on deck emergency. And I just want to talk about an observation that the deprogrammer and I were making about the angles that they're coming at us from, and just for all of us to be aware of the tactics that are being used. So on the one hand, we have incarcerated women being attacked and invisibilized and assaulted with almost, just like silence, just like public silence about it. They're trying to do it under wraps of darkness. And these are our, most undervalued women. These are our most at risk women. So on the one hand, they're coming after these women who are, for the most part, made to be invisible. And on the other hand, we can see Ivy League women being attacked with what happened last night with the race of Will Thomas, not Leah, Will. Will, who was like over 500 in men's swimming, and now is the number one women's swimmer who is breaking every pool record in every pool he completes in, and is exposing his penis to women in the locker room, which they are trying to speak about and yet being silenced by their coaches and by their schools. So on the one hand, we have the most privileged women. Something is being done to them openly and in plain sight, and they are being silenced. And on the other hand, we have, the most vulnerable women. So they're basically, these tactics are coming at women from all angles. It's coming at us from all sides. And it's absolutely a tactic. It's absolutely something that is being done very strategically. So, I think that we have to just really be mindful of the strategies that are being used against us. And in that sense, we have to really keep our eye on the prize and keep going after the institutions that are behind this, and keep our eye on the bigger vision of the values that are being promoted by this ideology, which is the erasure of women, which is a boundary violation of women, which is a men's sexual entitlement and boundary violation movement. And which has its also its underlying values in dissociation, dismemberment, disembodiment, uh, um, just in commodification, in objectification, all of these things. So we really have to be pressing our own values. And as the deprogrammer talks about, we have to make our own propaganda and promote our own values around this, which to my mind are all about embodiment and our intuition and trusting our instincts around sex recognition, trusting our sense perceptions. So doing all of those things to stay in touch with our own embodiment and to model that embodiment for kids. Because when we stay in touch with our sense perceptions, that's how we have appropriate boundaries. We can have accurate boundaries when we're in touch with our instincts and sense perception. So just to say, even as we fight this, even as we go up against this, we can't just be fighting against. We also have to be fighting for the vision that we hope to see. So as much as we're fighting this ideology, we have to offer a counter vision of what we want to see in the world. Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thanks, Deprogrammer, E Green, Rose, Dawn, Ali, Heather, MIL, who I'm sure maybe I know you, but I don't recognize what. Oh, you're talking to me from YouTube. Sometimes I don't recognize people because you're not talking to me from Twitter or some other platform that I recognize your name from. Um, Thanks all for joining in. I'm going to end the broadcast now, but I will be doing more later. Thank you, Dawn, for your encouragement to keep making videos and to keep speaking up. Thanks for being here from Michigan, E Green, and yeah, I'll speak to you all again soon. Bye.